welcome back to my channel. If you haven't seen me before, then my name is Jessica and it's really good to see you guys. This is basically just my YouTube channel where I like to talk about plants and plant related things. Today is basically about why I chose LECA in the first place as my main medium to grow my plants in, as well as some of the pros versus the cons that I have found over the last year. And it's actually almost 2 years. It's probably been like a year and 8 months since I first started converting some of my plants to LECA. To start off with, I just want to mention that what I found a con and what I found a pro might be not what you would consider a pro or a con. What I think makes life easier could be something that is a little bit more difficult, or makes your life more difficult. Take it as my personal experience and then you guys can take it from me, what you want to take out of it. I also do live in South Africa and I do live in Joburg, which means it is quite hot, quite dry. So those sort of things will definitely make a difference when it comes to keeping your plants in LECA and just keeping plants in general. That sort of thing does make quite a big difference. The main reason why I started to convert some of my plants to LECA, get rid of gnats. So I try to get rid of gnats multiple different ways, and a lot of the time it does work. There's a lot of videos out there on how to get rid of gnats. I've also done one, but they do come back, unfortunately. A lot of the time it's something that you really have to keep on top of when it comes to watering and that sort of stuff. And at the time I was very much an overwaterer. Gnats and overwaterers sort of just jump. They go together really, really well. So that was the first reason. I started converting a few plants over because of that reason, mainly the plants that had most of the gnats, or I felt like had most of the gnats. And these were sort of plants that had higher water requirements and that sort of stuff. So you could bottom water and all of that, but I just found it a mission. The other reason, my sister, who is my plant buddy kind of thing, we started this journey together and we really enjoy it, something that we kind of bond over quite a lot. She moved to Cape Town about a year ago and she was the person who would look after my plants when I was away. It was fine for her to look after them because she had the exact same plants as me basically, and she had a large enough, if not larger than mine sometimes, knowledge of plants, so I knew that they would always be fine and she enjoyed doing it, so it also wasn't a burden on her. Whereas now that she lives in Cape Town and I live in Joburg, she can't do that for me anymore. What I decided to do was to move most of my collection over to LECA so that if I got when I got somebody in to look after our cats in our house and my plants, it was a lot easier for them. I personally don't think it's fair to expect them to look after 60 plus plants and know what they're doing. And also I didn't want to lose plants, which wouldn't be their fault, but I just wanted to minimize the effort on their part, as well as the stress on my part and the stress on their part. It's just a lot easier for someone who doesn't know plants at all to just check if there's water in the bowl or not and either fill it up or don't. On one day a week, go around and just check all the plants quickly. And the other reason that I also decided to move my whole collection over was that I started a full-time job about a year ago, and so I was unable to check my plants every day anymore. I used to work from home. It was so easy for me to water plants as and when they needed to be, whereas with a full-time job I just didn't have that luxury or that option anymore, and so I did need to find an easier way for me to look after the amount of plants that I had. With all that in mind, I'm now going to go through my pros versus my cons, in my experience over the last sort of 2 years. I'm going to start off with cons and then I'm going to end with pros, but I'm going to say a little bit in the beginning that most of my cons, I kind of already have like a pro version of fixing the con, if that makes sense. As much as they're cons, I don't find them really that big of a con, but yeah, it depends. It really does come down to the individual. The first con, which is most certainly like my biggest con, it's the thing that I probably struggle with the most and the one thing I wish I could keep a better handle on, and that is if you do let the water reservoir run out, depending on the plant and depending on how long you let it run out for, you generally will get root rot when you refill that reservoir. Just like with soil, if roots dry out too much when they receive water again, depending on how you do it, they generally get root rot. It's just the way it works. It works like that in soil, and it will work like that with LECA as well. And it is something that I have let happen quite a bit, and I do sometimes forget to do. The biggest reason why I kind of let that happen is sometimes if the pot that the plant and the LECA's in, and the pot that the cashpo pot, if those two don't sit together very well, sometimes it's very difficult for me to actually check the level of the water, and so I become a little bit lazy and I'll just assume I will be. That's where that issue comes in the most for me. I want to give a pro straight after the con just because of love for LECA at this point. Moving over to the next con, you do need a cash pot for every plant, or some sort of a vessel or cover pot, or something that does not have drainage holes. So you obviously need a water reservoir with a net pot in order to have a LECA setup. You know, cash pots can get difficult to find, especially ones that fit the plant and the other pot, and so it can be a little bit of like a struggle, and you don't have an option. You can't just decide I'll go get a cash pot for it on the weekend. You need the cash pot or the cover pot or the vessel immediately. You do have to have like a little bit of thought and prep and planning before you repot things or convert over to LECA. When you have a plant in soil, you can just repot it, and if you don't have a pretty cover pot immediately available, it's fine. You can wait till the weekend to go buy one. That would be one of the other cons that I have. I do like to keep most of my plants in pretty cash pots to sort of match the aesthetic of the house. I love having plants for the sole purpose that they make my home beautiful, and they make my space peaceful and tranquil, and I just find having an ugly pot or a plastic normal nursery pot, it kind of defeats the point to some degree. And I am in design, that's what I do, so I do like things to look good and to match. That sort of also trickles into my next con, which is depending on the plant and the pot and the little setup that you have going. Sometimes it can be really hard to very quickly look at your water level, or so sometimes it's just really difficult to take the pot, the nursery pot or the net pot out of your cashbow or decorative pot to quickly observe how much water there is and that sort of stuff. So that's very dependent on your setup. That's where, sort of point 1 and point 2 make a big difference. If it's really easy, like this alocasia that I have, this dragon scale, he's really easy for me to actually check. I can just basically lift him out quite easily and see how much water, well, let's see if I can do it without pouring, is in the bottom. Sort of point 1 and point 3 that I'm now discussing doesn't really play too much when you've got a nice little setup like this one. But when you have a setup, even this one is a pretty good setup. I can very quickly just lift it out and see what's going on. But like with this guy, it is quite a mission. So if you look, the pot that he's in is very tight for this other pot. And like there I actually got him out quite easy to check, but generally it's actually quite difficult for me to check. So because of that, sometimes the watering process is a little bit stressful or difficult, or not as quick as I would like it to be, because I'm faffing and fiddling over trying to see how much water there is. So if you got your shit together and you get like really good fitting pots, then that's not a problem, and things that work well together. I also don't really like to see too much space around the pot on the inside. With my Clarinervium, I thought that would be a nice setup because it just looks very seamless from the outside, especially because Anthurium, the way that it grows, you do see a lot of the top of the plant in terms of where the LECA is sitting, and so because of that, I just wanted the way the pot sat together to be very neat. And later on down the line, I've realized that maybe it's not really the most convenient option or way of doing it. Then sort of moving on to the next point, starting up with LECA can be a pretty expensive exercise in the beginning. Buying all your materials in terms of getting your pretty cash bows and cover pots, buying all your LECA, the nutrients itself is quite expensive. It's probably the most expensive part because You know, if you do have soil, chances are you are buying soil anyway, as well as you are buying pretty cash pots anyway, depending on how you like your plants to look. The place that I bought mine from, I only bought the 450 mils, and I bought the Flora series, so I bought all three, and that is 450 excluding shipping. I would say, yeah, just under 2 years I have only used half, and that's on about 60 plants. You know, initially it's expensive. 450 is not that expensive, but it is the smaller bottles. The bigger bottles I think was 700 to 800, somewhere around there. At that time I wasn't considering moving all of my plants over, so that would have been like a cheaper option in the long run, especially because it does last you a long time. And the LECA is completely reusable. You can just boil it. The fifth con, the converting process can be quite stressful on you and the plant. It can be difficult when you're not sure what you're doing, especially in the beginning where you just don't have the confidence in yourself and what you're doing because it's all new. But it can be time consuming moving your plants over, especially if you decide like one day I'm moving everything to LECA. I mean, it's going to take you a long time to do that, but you know, even just doing one plant, it is more time consuming to convert from soil to LECA than it would be just repotting your plants. It can be stressful on the plant depending on how you do it. So that's just something to keep in mind. You know, if you are converting over expensive, rare plants, or even plants that people have given to you that mean something to you, it can be quite stressful. Yay, moving over to the pros and why I love using LECA so much. The first reason, and my first pro, and it's by far my biggest pro, is that your watering for every plant is the same. It's just, it takes out, I don't want to say the guesswork, because you know, when you're watering your plants in soil, you're not guessing, but it kind of is. You know, it's obviously the soil's either dry or it's wet and then you're going to water it or you're not. But some plants like to dry out completely and some plants like to stay a little bit damp, and sometimes depending on your mix, and the water, you know, drains really quickly out of the top half, but it stays quite moist at the bottom for a little bit longer than it should. There is room for error, especially if you have a large variety of plants. It does add an element, a few more elements of complexity and room for error and things to assume if you're in a rush or you don't really have time. The thing that I love about LECA is you check the plant and the reservoir either needs more water or it doesn't. And it is like that for every single plant that you own. It doesn't change. With that, I move into my second pro, which is kind of a continuation of that. It's that my plants can be on a schedule. I check my plants every Saturday. That is my main time where I go around and I check every single plant that I own, and I check its water reservoir, and I also do the flushes when I need to, which is normally once a month, so it's not often. And then every Wednesday I generally check certain plants. So there are certain plants that are either in quite small pots and in really hot areas or in direct sun for a few hours a day where evaporation does happen within the reservoir, and so I know that there are certain plants that can't go for a week. The last thing is about that is I just double check those plants, and if I see signs of any other plants sort of struggling a little bit for whatever reason, Wednesdays is another day that I generally try to check my plants are on a schedule. And I know people always say you can't have your plants on a schedule, and this way it's perfect for me. I love having my plants on a schedule. Sometimes as and when is not an option, especially when you're busy, and I don't want to lose plants because I'm busy. My next pro is one of the reasons why I did convert over to LECA, and that would be the fungus gnats. There are less fungus gnats with LECA, but there are still bugs. I mean, mealybugs, thrips, all sorts. All of those things can still exist within LECA. But the awesome thing about LECA is that you can pull your entire plant out, rinse the roots off, rinse the plants off, soak them in a bath if you need to for a little while. It's an option you have that you don't have unless you're going to repot a plant when it's in soil. The other nice thing about it is that you can't overwater your plants in LECA if you're trying to treat them for whatever bugs. So, you know, you don't have to try like cover up the soil so that you're not saturating the soil too much. You can literally just spray everything down until you're satisfied that there's nothing left. Another thing is you could literally pull the plants out. I had an infestation of thrips, and I was so busy at the time that when I first saw it, I kind of just pretended I didn't, and eventually I did have to deal with it because it started to move to quite a few of my plants. Thankfully it was only in one section, but the nice thing was about that, because they were in LECA, I pulled every single plant out of the LECA. I soaked everything in a bath, the roots, the leaves, and I boiled all that LECA again. I did that the first time. Obviously with thrips, you do have to keep repeating your treatments. It's not like a one time and they were gone kind of thing. But I felt very confident that I had, no thrips left on my LECA, on the actual substrate, that I had boiled any form of adults or eggs away, and so I could just keep treating the leaves and the stems and petioles and all of that from there. And I really did get rid of my thrips pretty quickly because of the fact that most of my plants were in LECA, so that was absolutely fantastic. That was a big pro for me. My fourth pro would then be the same reason as to why I moved over. It's a lot easier to teach people or to show people or expect people to look after your plants while you are away, especially if you're away for more than a week or so. If you're away, say 2 weeks, you can literally do your own plants the day that you leave or the day before you leave, and a week later ask them to check it, top up the water, and then you should be back. So if you go away for 2 weeks, you only need somebody to check on your plants once, unless you have a plant that you know for a fact needs water twice a week because of maybe the spot that it's in. Like my Monstera Peru that I was telling you about sort of in the beginning, he's in quite a small pot, and he sits in a very sunny spot, so evaporation happens really quickly. But what I could do with that is I could actually just pull him further away if he doesn't have as much growth as he normally does because he's not getting the best conditions anymore. That's fine, as long as he's not going to die because he's getting root rot. And then still ask the person who's looking after your house to just double check on that one. It makes life a bit easier for them, and it makes life a little less stressful for you. You can actually go away and enjoy your holiday and know that as long as they do check the plants when you ask them to, that they will be fine. So my next pro can also be a bit of a con, depending. So I've converted everything into LECA. I've converted loads of different monsteras, loads of different alocasias. I have converted 3 calathea. I've done a maranta. I've done my Stramanthe Trio Star, and I've done my Zebrina. I've done anthuriums, I've done syngoniums, I've done scindapsus, I've done lots of philodendrons. You really can convert anything. If you're not confident just yet, what you can do is you can then cut it, propagate it in water, and then pop it into LECA. And then once you know that that cutting and that prop is doing really well, you could convert the main plant over. Or if you're quite happy with just the propagation that you've done, you can sell the soil one, or have 2, one in soil and one in LECA. But there are ways of getting around a harsh way of scrubbing the roots, which I don't do. I do not ever scrub the soil off of my roots. As much as people say that you should and you need to, I don't take toothbrushes to them. I've just never needed to. As long as washing as much of the soil off as you can, they generally convert fine. And I've done it so much that I can actually see when the plants are struggling a little bit, and then I'll just pull it back out of the LECA and reassess the roots, re-clean the roots, wash them down, that sort of thing. So it's quite easy. But I am going to be doing a full video. I have done converting certain plants to LECA. I've done a video on my fiddly fig, converting that, on converting my anthurium, I think a philodendron, I'm not sure which one. It was more like me figuring it out and can it be done kind of thing, rather than an informational video on how to do it. So I am going to do a video on sort of how I do it and what works best for me. The only plant that I have sort of lost, it's not gone just yet, is a Zebrina, but I had gone away like a week after I had done it, and I had moved its spots. There was just a lot of other factors than just moving over to the LECA. The LECA definitely didn't help, but he's still alive-ish. It's we'll see what happens with that. Other than that, I haven't really lost anything, and I've done a fiddle leaf fig. I'm really proud of that, and it absolutely loves growing in LECA. I think that's basically it. I mean, I could talk probably for another 30 minutes easy on my pros. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope that there was something that could help you out or help you make a decision on whether you want to go for LECA or not. I also want you to know that I'm not just saying that LECA is the best option for your plants. It's the best option for my plants, but I haven't even tried other things yet. I haven't tried LECA CON'S, which I really want to try next. So I am probably, once I can source some of the LECA CON'S, I'm definitely going to try that. But my point is, you know, what works for me is not always going to work for everybody, and you need to find something that you love, you're comfortable with. If you are struggling with soil for whatever reasons, then, you know, potentially considering other options, and something like LECA is definitely available, and so you should be trying different things in order to see what works for you best. With that in mind, take everything that I have said with a pinch of salt and know that it's my own opinions. All of this is from my own experience. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then please do hit the like button and consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.